Glenn Matthews is a World War II veteran who agreed to share his stories from his service as a part of a project conducted by the Illinois World War II Veterans Memorial Board in an attempt to keep the stories of these brave men alive. As Mr. Matthews recounts his time of war, we develop a greater respect for his service to his fellow man and his country.
I was in the infantry army, first lieutenant, principally in the South Pacific. So I went in November of 42 and went from Rock Island Depot in Peoria to East St. Louis, and from there was assigned to Camp Robinson, Arkansas. That's where I took my basic training.
Mr. Matthews has strong feelings on the subject of military life in his days of basic training.
Well, everything was strange. When I took my basic training, I had 5 weeks out of a 6-week course. At that time, they were desperate for officers, and one of the requirements to be an officer, you had to have an IQ of 110. They said, 19 people in this battalion are eligible for OCS. 17 of them have applied. What's the matter with you? Well, I didn't know anything about it. It was on the bulletin board, and I never paid any attention to it. Didn't have any aspirations for higher rank or anything. Didn't know anything about it. And the guy said, well, I'm going to put your name in. The other 19th guy did the same thing, and we were the only two that made it. And so in 6 months, I was a second lieutenant. I only had 5 weeks of basic training. Normally it's 3 months. I'm one of the few soldiers in the Army that never had all their basic training.
While in boot camp, Mr. Matthews found barracks life to be very primitive.
Oh, the barracks. In Arkansas, I lived in a hut. It had floors, and it had wood sides with tilt-out screens, windows over all sides, up about waist high on up. It had a tent over the roof. That was we had no heat, except we had a little stove we could use an hour a night, I think, or half an hour. And other than that, we were without heat. It got down to 12 degrees that winter.
After graduating from boot camp, Mr. Matthews' time in World War II had just begun.
Well, from Arkansas, I went to Fort Benning, Georgia, and I was there 3 months. Then I went to Camp Alders, Texas. That's out by Fort Worth. And then I went to Camp Phillips, Kansas. That's right in the middle of Kansas, near Alayna. And then I went to the desert out by Yuma, Arizona. And from there to Fort Ord, California. From Fort Ord, I went to Angel Island, which is in San Francisco Bay, near Alcatraz. And from there, I sailed on a big ship down to Goodenough Island, off the east coast of New Guinea. And from there, I went to, by way of Milne Bay and Port Moresby. Trained a while there, and we moved to Finch Haven, which that's on the north side. It was only about 300 miles from where we were, but there are no roads across there. It's all mountainous, and you couldn't walk 300 miles without some supply. And it's on the north side of New Guinea. Then we went to, by way of Landia, it's also New Guinea, and we went to Denogga Island, and our battalion also invaded Sulawan Island and Hamonhon. That's at the mouth of Leyte Gulf. And then we went to Leyte, and from Leyte went to Lingan Gulf, which is north end of Luzon. And then we moved down to San Fernando, Pampanga. There's another San Fernando in the Philippines too, but that's a little north of Manila. I was all over that area, all over central and, mostly central Luzon.
World War II not only affected the soldiers themselves, but their families they left behind as well.
So I changed my address, wrote home and told them I was 6th Ranger Battalion, and they never heard from me again for a couple of months. We were in the Philippines. My wife reminded me later, she said, well, we thought you were dead. there's always pressure and stress if you're in the Army, especially if you're in a combat area. You're worried about somebody might be shooting at you. It's like a big hunting game, really, but only it's not a game. It's for real.
While war is never a pleasurable experience, soldiers still found their ways to pass the time.
We had music and stuff like that we could do, and we played cards, and some of the guys shoot dice, some of them gamble a lot.
While Mr. Matthews was on base, he enjoyed a few activities. However, taking a break from war was always a pleasurable experience.
On leave, well, I came home. I had 3 leaves in Georgia, a delay en route. I could come home. I had another leave when I was in Kansas. When I moved from the desert to go to Fort Ord, they didn't give me enough time to go home, so I went to visit an uncle in California.
After coming back from leave and returning overseas, Mr. Matthews wishes he would have taken pictures and kept a journal.
When I got on that ship, they said, don't keep a diary, and if you do, you have to send it back through channels to be censored. And they'll hold it for you till the war's over, and then they'll give it back to you. And they said the same thing about pictures. Don't take a camera. But if you had one, they told you, well, send the pictures to the Army processing plant, and we'll send them back to you after the war's over. So I had neither, and I always regretted it. I should have forgotten the rules and kept a diary and pictures.
Though he had regrets, there wasn't time to focus on them. He instead focused on his battalion's orders.
We didn't engage in any big battles. We were more or less a patrol. We'd send out patrols, and we invaded 3 islands by ourselves. But the Japs ran. We didn't have to fight. We had, I think we killed 30 Japs on the Nugget Islands and about 30 on Ceylon. But we did get into, I didn't get into the missions myself, but we sent out about 100 Americans, and they joined up forces with a couple of 100 Filipinos, and we got prisoners out of Cabanatuan. That was our biggest mission, but we never went into a heavy line battle.
Mr. Matthews' battalion was a critical part of the daring prisoner of war rescue at Cabanatuan.
January the, I think, 26th of 1945, our colonel got a call to go to 6th Army headquarters. When he got over there, they told him they'd like to go get the prisoners out of Cabanatuan if they could. There were only about 500 of them left. There were originally several thousand. When they surrendered at the Battalion Peninsula, there was about 65,000 or 70,000 maybe soldiers altogether. Some of them were Filipino, and they dwindled down. Some of them were sent to Japan for slave labor. Some of them were put other places around the Philippines. They were down to a little over, I think it was 512 exactly, left in Cabanatuan prison. The week before that, one soldier got loose down on Palawan Island. They had been building an airstrip for the Japs. They, I think, was 6th Army, or 8th Army was coming from the south, and we were going from the north and working together to close the gap. The Japs apparently were not going to let any prisoners be rescued. They were going to kill them first. There was no air raid, but they sounded the alarm and herded all those people into a shelter underground, throwed in some gasoline and burned them up. There were 2 of them got away. They had dug a tunnel previous to that. They had tried to dig a tunnel to tunnel out and escape, and 2 of them made it out. They finished getting through there and got to the beach and got away. There was some more got through there, but they didn't get away. So, they just bayoneted them to death. The one guy got into the water and swam out and came up by a floating coconut. Now, the coconut is just about as big as a man's head, and he floated there until dark behind a coconut. So they didn't see him. They thought he was drowned. He found his way to the American lines. He got in for some Filipinos, and they got him to the American lines, and he told his story. I think it was only a day or two till it got to 6th Army headquarters, and they ordered us to try to get the prisoners out of Battalion. So on about the 26th of January, they decided to go get those prisoners if they could. Colonel Musey decided he'd take about 100 men. There were some more that volunteered to go, and so they also boosted it up to around 120 altogether. There was a photography unit that decided they wanted to go, and I think there were 4 photographers, and they couldn't take pictures when it was a night battle. You can't flash bulbs out there and give your position away. But anyhow, they got a few in the daytime, and they coordinated with a unit called the Alamo Scout. And the Scouts, I believe there were 4 of them that were coordinated work with us, and we were to join with 2 Filipino groups. They'd made guerrilla outfits, or they'd had a few battles, but they didn't have very much in the way of weapons. We gave them some more weapons. Those Filipinos blocked the road. The men went out on that mission had to go across 2 rivers and 2 major highways. The Japs were moving troops up and down those highways constantly, so they had to get across there mainly at night. They managed to do that without getting detected. They took them out, I think 30 or 40 miles on a truck, and they left a radio man there because the radios we had wouldn't reach all the way back. The rest of them went on walking about 30 miles farther. They hid one night, Filipino houses, hid under the house, and watched the Jap soldiers go by on the road. Then the 29th, I believe it was, they moved up in position. To get the rest of the way toward that camp, they had to crawl about a quarter of a mile on their bellies through a rice paddy. They were coming from the west. The sun was in the sentry's eyes. He couldn't see very good at the ground. They crawled up there. One platoon, that would be about 30 men maybe, went around to the backside and crawled through a sanitation ditch, which is a sewage trench that came out of the camp. They crawled around through that, stationed several sentries. One guy was in charge, the lieutenant named Frank Murphy. He incidentally was an ex-football player from Notre Dame. He's a quarterback, and he was the trigger man. When he fired his first shot, they'd know that he was in position, and the guys on the other side would come up from that way and attack the main part of the camp. They got in, got the prisoners out, got them about a mile to a river, and forded the river, carried a lot of the guys, and got them into some ox carts that's pulled with water buffalo, and they marched back about 17 miles, had a tussle with the Hucks. The Huck-Bella Hop was the communist organization there that thought they'd take over the government. When they got through that, then they managed to hook up with American forces who had advanced somewhat, and they got out 512. There was one guy didn't get out because he died. One of the soldiers was carrying him out. Died on the way, but they took his body on. The Filipinos set the roadblocks and cut wires and telephone wires and stuff like that, and blew up a bridge. We gave them some bazookas to kill, to disable the tanks. They had 4 tanks. We managed to get them out of operation. They didn't get the whole bridge blowed out, but they got the floor out of it, and the tanks couldn't use it, but the soldiers were coming across, walking on the beams. The guys that came back from that said they were marching 4 abreast, double time, that's trotting, toward that camp. They surmised the Japs thought prisoners were riding and they were going to go up and help kill them. I think they said they figured there were about 400 there. There were about 200 guards at the prison camp. When our guys got out, they lost 2 men on that raid. Figured there was about 400 to 600 or maybe more dead Japs.
Mr. Matthews' battalion not only aided in the prison raid, but they also faced outside attacks while in the Philippines.
When we first landed at Lingad Gulf, there was a hilly area there, the Cabroon Hills, and there were some Japs hanging around in there, some soldiers. They hadn't attacked us, but they were there, and they'd like to get rid of them. So we got the job as, say, mopping up, go run them out of there or kill them or something. We sent a company out there to do just that, and that's two platoons, about 30 men each. One platoon leader, a little distance apart, and he poked around over a little hill there, and he saw a little Filipino hut down below with a bunch of Jap soldiers there. So he just ambushed them and killed 14 of them. Well, that created a ruckus of gunfire going on, and the other platoon came over to see what's going on. They were about a quarter mile away, and apparently there was a Jap platoon did the same thing. The Japs saw our boys first, and they killed 2 of them. Our boys, they beat them back, and they got out of there, came back, and they got together with the other group, and they went back and buried the one guy that was dead. There's another guy they couldn't find. They searched, couldn't find him, and they went back 4 days looking for that guy. The 4th day they found him. Been wounded. He crawled into about like a hog wallow. It's a buffalo wallow. They roll around in the mud about like big old hogs do. And he had that mud coated all over him, and we found him, took him back to the hospital. He was still alive, and he lived. He had 4 bullets through his abdomen, and the doctor said that mud probably saved his life. This first lieutenant killed the 14 Japs. He was kind of proud of his little battle. He'd never lost a man. He took me back out there to see that battlefield. Along with that, we were going to pick up a few souvenirs if we could find anything. He got a Jap helmet, kicked it over. There's a flag inside of it, a Japanese flag, of course. It's all mattered was blood and brains. Now, soldiers on the battlefield are pretty crude. Well, I wasn't too much better. I unbuckled a belt off of a Japanese soldier. The remains were just a skeleton. Unbuckled that belt and slipped off a bayonet. I've still got it. Well, we brought those back to camp. They were still infested with blood and brains and human flesh, and that's a nasty odor. If they ever smell it, it's an odor you never forget and you can't get over. He washed that flag in gasoline. My bayonet had a strange odor too. I took the wood part of the handles off and cleaned them and oiled it, and it was fine. Metal cleans up. But that flag, he washed it in GI soap. It still stinks. You have to drag it. You have to dry it in a tent. We shared a tent. You have to drive it in a tent because you can't fly a Japanese flag in your area. After he got it dried, it still stinks. So he put gasoline, tried that. I think he tried gasoline twice and didn't do any good. Well, he said, I think I'm going over to 6th Army headquarters and trade this for something else. Them guys over there are always looking for souvenirs or something. And so while it was still fresh, he took it over 6th Army headquarters and he came back with a gas lantern. And gas lanterns make good light. Before that, we had a candle. So, and the rest of us would get along on candles. Well, when he got this gas lantern, would have been made up out of spare parts and bent pieces and all that, but it worked. So he traded this supply sergeant for this lantern and brought it back, and we had light. Boy, as long as there wasn't any air raid, we had lights. And about a week or so, here come some sergeant from 6th Army. He's come over there looking, come to headquarters, and I happened to be there. And he said, I'd like to know, where's that Lieutenant Mobley? And I said, well, he's my tent mate, so I'll take you down and show you. I think he's down in his tent. I took him down to the area, and he said, Lieutenant, this here flag smells funny. What's the matter with it? And he said, well, I don't know. I picked it up out on the battlefield. Well, it stinks. He said, I'd like to have my lantern back. Joe said, a trade's a trade, a deal's a deal. He said, you get out of here. I'm keeping the lantern. Well, he kept the lantern, and the sergeant went away kind of mumbling. Well, okay, taking his flag with him. And Joe gave him a parting shot. He said, wash it in gasoline, that'll fix it.
Even though Mr. Matthews shared good memories with fellow soldiers, coming home was long awaited. However, adapting to life after war proved to be a nerve-wracking experience.
Well, when I came back from World War II, I ended up, they sent me to St. Louis and gave me discharge there, and I rode home. I met my wife and rode home to Peoria on Interurban. The worst thing was finding a place to live. Everything was full.
After the initial shock of returning home wore off, he began to realize how the war had truly affected him.
It's hard to explain how it affects you because you don't know what you'd have been like if you hadn't had it. But I will say this, one of the things that brings you up to, there was a little temporary cemetery there. I walked through that and I saw the name of one of the lieutenants that graduated from OCS with me. I think that probably made me realize you got better be careful.
Throughout the history of our country, one thing that has never changed is that the citizens of America love their home. The people who fought for this land felt strongly about that. They had real courage, but also experienced true hardships during their struggles. Being able to hear a first-hand account of the trials of war was very eye-opening and gave us all a new respect for veterans, young and old. Listening to the stories about the prison raids and life during the war made his stories come to life. The veterans serving risk everything for our country, and it is extremely humbling to listen to the stories of such great trials and struggles. Our current men and women serving look up to veterans of the past, especially those of World War II. The strength and courage of the past veterans set a standard for those fighting today. We are grateful that Mr. Matthews could share his experiences with us, as difficult as that may have been for him. We are so thankful for the service he and all veterans gave to this country. His bravery and sacrifice will be remembered and honored, and we are so thankful that he was willing to share his experiences with us.